Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're joining us today because we are unpacking some incredibly fascinating source material. We're looking at what's basically an invisible war being waged right under our noses. We're doing a deep dive into what the source calls the dopamine loop. And honestly, the stakes couldn't be any higher here because the prize that these tech companies are fighting for, it's your mind itself. So let's set the scene with something that I think pretty much all of us can relate to. Picture this. It's 7:14 a.m. Your alarm just went off, and before your eyes even fully adjust to the morning light, it's reached over, grabbed that glass slab off the nightstand, and pressed your thumb right to the screen. As the source material so vividly points out, within just 90 seconds, you've already processed global tragedies, public character assassinations, hyper-targeted advertisements, and you haven't even taken a real deep breath of fresh air yet, but your brain has already consumed way more data than your ancient ancestors did in an entire month. The invisible war. Evolutionary mismatch. Now, you might be wondering, why do we do this to ourselves? Blame ourselves. But the explainer makes a crucial point here. Our inability to put the phone down isn't laziness at all. It's actually an evolutionary lock, and it's being systematically picked by supercomputers. We have to rewind about 50,000 years. Your brain was fundamentally designed for a world of extreme scarcity. For an ancient hunter-gatherer, finding a bush of sweet berries was literally a matter of life or death. But then you compare that to the modern digital worker today, sitting there bathed in the glow of a monitor, just getting blasted with endless streams of data from massive server farms. It is a complete and total evolutionary mismatch. A word we hear thrown around all the time, dopamine. We almost always think of it as a reward or the pleasure chemical. Like you eat a cupcake, you get dopamine. The research points out that dopamine is actually the molecule of more. When our ancestors found those life-saving berries, dopamine flooded their system, essentially screaming, "Remember this location, come back here, do this again so you don't die." It is purely a motivational chemical. It drives repetition. And massive tech corporations have figured out exactly how to harvest that exact mechanism. Moving on to section 2, the slot machine effect. We're shifting gears from our evolutionary past to the modern behavioral psychology that actually engineered the apps on your phone. And I'll warn you, this is where things get a little psychological horror. Back in the 1950s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner put rats in a box with a lever. Step 1 of his experiment was pretty straightforward. If the rat pressed the lever and got a food pellet every single time, a totally predictable reward, it just pressed the lever when it was hungry. But step 2 is where everything changed. Skinner made the reward unpredictable. Sometimes the rat got a giant pellet, sometimes a tiny one, and sometimes absolutely nothing at all. In psychology, this is called a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. And the result? The rats literally went insane. They started pressing the lever obsessively, completely ignoring everything else around them. And, well, that brings us right back to your pocket. Think about your favorite social media apps. When you pull down to refresh your feed, there's always that little half-second delay, right? Maybe a little wheel spins at the top of the screen. The explainer reveals a massive hidden secret here. That delay is completely artificial. The app isn't actually taking that long to load data, it is deliberately mimicking the spinning wheels of a slot machine. Your brain hangs there in suspense for a split second. Will I get a like, a new message, nothing? And that exact anticipation triggers a massive, massive surge of dopamine. Which brings us to this incredibly stark quote from the source material. "You are the rat, the phone is the lever." It's a pretty visceral reality check, isn't it? The exact same psychological tricks used in those 1950s laboratories are the literal mechanics engineering our daily habits today. Your shrinking brain, the physical damage. We are really escalating the stakes now because this isn't just some clever psychological parlor trick. Modern fMRI studies show us the actual physical damage caused by this chronic high dopamine consumption. Take your prefrontal cortex, for example. That's the part of your brain responsible for willpower, emotional regulation, and long-term planning. Well, the medical data shows decreasing gray matter density in that exact area. It is literally shrinking. Meanwhile, your amygdala, which is your brain's fear and anxiety center, is becoming hyperactive. So, according to the research, we are essentially engineering ourselves to be more impulsive, way more anxious, and frankly, less capable of deep, sustained thought. And that cognitive decline shows up in one incredibly startling number: 8 seconds. Just think about that for a moment. When was the absolute last time you sat down and read a book or even watched a movie without instinctively reaching for a second screen? The average human attention span has dropped from 12 seconds back in the year 2000 down to just 8 seconds today. And to put that into perspective, which is kind of mind-blowing, The source notes that we have officially fallen behind the attention span of a common goldfish. Being able to focus for more than a few minutes without checking a device is now the rare exception. The outrage algorithm, attention as currency. So why does this matter beyond just our own individual brains? If you've ever found yourself wondering why digital feeds constantly feel so angry, so chaotic, and so deeply divisive, it really just comes down to algorithmic financial machinery. Why does outrage equal engagement? Simply put, anger is the ultimate attention multiplier. These algorithms figured out very quickly that outrage keeps you online much, much longer than joy does. If you see a nice post and you feel calm, you close the app and go about your day. But if you're furious, you comment, you share it, you argue with strangers. And all that time spent typing out angry replies equals more ad views for the platform. They intentionally prioritize outrage because, at the end of the day, it generates revenue. It all boils down to this terrifying, classic Silicon Valley truth. If you aren't paying for the product, you are the product. For a long time, we all sort of thought that tools like Google, Meta, and TikTok were just these nice, free services we happily chose to use. But the source material makes it clear that is just not the reality of their business model. You are the thing being sold. Your scrolling habits, your deepest insecurities, your political leanings, and even your sleep cycles. All of those data points are constantly being packaged up, predicted, and auctioned off to the highest bidder by massive server farms every single second of the day. But listen, there is hope. Section 5, reclaiming your mind. Let's all take a deep breath here because it's time to pivot to some actionable and empowering solutions. You absolutely can fight back against this. And the reason why is to find light here. Neuroplasticity. It's the brilliant capability of the human brain to heal, to rewire itself, and to actually rebuild its own gray matter. All that physical damage we talked about earlier, the source explicitly emphasizes that it is not permanent. But, and this is a big but, it absolutely requires your deliberate intervention. So what does that intervention actually look like? Well, the explainer lays out a really concrete 3-step protocol to help you take back control. Step 1 is simple. Disable non-human notifications. Basically, if a real human being didn't write it to you directly, you just don't need to see it pop up. Step 2, go grayscale on your phone. Turning off all that color and removing those vibrant, stressful red notification badges instantly kills the primal visual trigger. And finally, step 3, establish a phone-free bedroom. Remember that 7:14 a.m. doom scroll we started with? If you protect your morning, you protect your mind for the rest of the day. Which brings us to our final thought, and really a direct challenge to you. Every single day, you are faced with a choice. Will you let giant server farms run your thoughts and dictate your mood, or will you take the wheel? The explainer's final takeaway challenges you to put your phone down right after this. Don't scroll to the next video, don't check your messages, just turn the screen off and sit in silence for 2 whole minutes. Test your willpower today, right now. Take back your attention. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.